Oneness Hour. Before I start today, I want to apologize for the low audio level in the last one. Accidentally forgot to crank up the mic volume after I had to re-add it in the thing, and it always comes up at 50%. So if it wasn't easy to understand me in the last one, I apologize. I'll try to do it again if there's enough demand. Otherwise, I guess maybe the gods decided that I should not be well heard in that message of prophecies. At any rate, today's topic is going to be flipping over maybe a bit to a more scientific focus, a more rational focus, which I am wont to do, that kind of encompasses some of the things that I've been discussing with some of my friends in the physics and metaphysics and pseudoscience community on Nassim Haramein group on Facebook that I belong to. If you're not familiar with the work of Nassim Haramein, he is one of the physicists that is most willing to buck the materialist physics community to delve into what one hopes are spiritual physics truths. And more power to him. I think many of his adherents have kind of gone off the deep end, and that's kind of what's driving this discussion today. I'm going to title it True Lies and Logical Fallacies. Relation is not equal to connection, communion is not equal to oneness, and attraction is not equal to power. So, let's delve into that one at a time. Okay, now one of the things you've probably heard a lot from the New Age spiritual community, especially those that say that, well, my spirituality is based on the truth of science, the truth of physics. The standard pat statement you'll hear is everything is connected. Now, this is a logical fallacy, and I'm going to prove that to you. Okay? And I'm going to encourage you to modify that idea to the truth that everything is related. Not connected, related. Okay, so let's discuss this then. Everything is connected comes from the idea that everything is part of a whole. The multiverse, the universe as a whole. And it ties back to some of the experiments that have been done in quantum mechanics that show that connections can be maintained across any distance. Now, some have said, wow, cool, you can take a photon, two photons that have some relationship to each other, and you can move them to any distance, and you can make a change on one and affect the other. Now, this is true. This has been observed. This is an experiment that has been done. But it does not logically follow that everything is connected. It does not logically follow that those two photons will always be connected. This is a logical fallacy. This is a deduction that is not supported by the experiment. These photons have a relationship, and they choose to be connected. This is how free will works. And those photons each have their own little tiny soul that gets their little tiny choices to make. This is why two individual photons might choose to have a relationship. and they might choose to maintain that relationship at a long distance. Yes, you can observe that. Can you prove that every photon has one of these relationships? Can you prove that those relationships are permanent? No, you can't. You are creating a religion out of a fallacy, out of a really obvious fallacy that you can disprove simply by looking at the dynamics of human souls. The nature of free will does not change from being a photon to being a human to being a galaxy or a universe. The law of free will transcends all of that because the law of free will applies to all souls. Everything is related because everything has a source. Now, that source is not an ultimate connection. It is not forcing everything to be connected forever and ever and ever, and forcing those little things that are connected into a behavior pattern that it likes. This is the fallacy of power. This is the fallacy of the almighty force that runs the universe. That's not the way it works. Except in some universes which are built upon the principle of almighty forces, which I term as Borg universes. Universes run by gods that control everything, that dictate everything, that force all of the souls in their universe to see exactly what they want them to see, hear exactly what they want them to hear, and do exactly what they want them to do. And if that is your particular goal as a soul, that's the kind of universe you'll end up having if you ever advance to a God level. You will have one of these universes where you can have everything you want, but nobody's going to want to play your game. And eventually, when you can't find any conscious souls that want to play your game, you're going to have to get all unconscious souls, level 0 souls, who are basically programmable. They don't have any real consciousness yet. And you can make them play your games for as long as their term of service lasts, which it depends on what you're making them play, how much suffering the laws of the multiverse will let them take before they get a chance to move on. This is one of the laws of reincarnation. It's one of the few laws that changes depending on what kind of vehicle you're incarnated in. The human soul vehicle was designed, at least originally, the Homo sapiens version of it, the latest version of it, was designed to have a lifespan of roughly 100 years. Previous versions had longer lifespans. Those didn't work out. That's why people don't live so long anymore. Well, maybe except for a few holdovers from the dinosaur era of humanity. Other soul vehicles have a very long, I would think of it more of half-life, if you will, in physical terms. There's not a set period, and there's a standard deviation around it. That's why some people live longer than 100 years, some live less than that. And because death can come at any time, past 100, there's a very sharp fall off, which they're trying to extend through transhumanism, through modifying the human soul vehicle, which is something you can do. You're just doing what other God wannabes have done to create the soul vehicle in the first place. If you think you can do a better job than they did, if you think you can re-enable just the right set of genes to get us back to where we used to be, knock yourself out. Okay, so relation is not connection. A soul can choose to break connection. This is basically what happens when we end a relationship, when we get a divorce, when we tell our parents or our siblings or whatever, I never want to talk to you again, or parents. You've all seen that in action. That is breaking a connection. Now, sometimes those connections come back, but it has to be voluntary, doesn't it? Now tell me, why would it work that way for the human soul vehicle and be something different for other soul vehicles? And where do you get off as a human saying that everything is connected? It's not. It's bullshit. Everything has a choice to be connected, but it has a choice to be separate too. This is the nature of free will. You can force connection, of course. If you have absolute control over things, you can force your children to be connected with you for a time, until they get to an age where if they don't want to be connected anymore, they will disconnect. You can force your employees to be connected to you for a time, until they get to the point where, you know what, this is too painful, this is just awful, I'm going to get out of here, and they will disconnect. You can force your cult members to connect for a time, as long as they believe your bullshit cult, and will follow it to the ends of the earth. At some point they want to disconnect. Not everybody that was in these suicide cults wanted to stay connected once they realized their leaders were fucking insane. This is truth. So whenever anybody says everything is connected, tell them, prove it. I don't believe you. Where did you come up with that absurd, silly idea? And let's just nix this lie, or disconnect from the people who have it, because they're really out of touch with reality. And they are basically espousing a fallacy that is the central fallacy behind tyranny. Because if you believe everything is connected, you believe that there is some force that's keeping them connected. You believe in some almighty micromanaging force that's connecting everything willy-nilly. And that is Borg. That is the belief in tyranny, the belief in totalitarianism. Everything is connected means that it must be connected or else. If you want to disconnect from me, you must not be part of my one, and we must stamp you out. This is sick stuff. This is the root of all evil. Okay, so what are some of the other things I wanted to cover? Communion is not equal to oneness. The other thing you hear a lot of people say is, we are all one. We are all one. We're all creatures of pure love. And we're just disconnected from it in this human bodies, and we're really part of this one source consciousness, this Christ consciousness that exists somewhere, and we've just disconnected from it because somebody forced us to be disconnected, and we've got to get back to source so we can be happy again. This is insane too. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. This is insane nonsense. We are not all one. It's totally absurd. What intelligent creator would create an intelligence, a consciousness that was one, that shared all the memories, shared everything, had to work on every problem with a single oneness? It doesn't work that way. The first thing you learn in AI school is that if you want to solve a problem most efficiently, you have to break up the problem into smaller problems and assign those smaller problems to processors, to AIs that are tuned to solving those problems. That happens even in the Borg universe. Especially in Borg universes, you're told, do this, show up at this time, do this job, or else. This is a totalitarian state. That's not God's universe. That's probably not the universe that you want to play in for the rest of your eternity. You might want to go there for an incarnation or two to prove to yourself how horrible totalitarianism is, how horrible the idea of an almighty, micromanaging, perfect God is. But you probably won't want to stay there very long because it's stupid. Unless you happen to be somebody that likes to be told what to do, when to do, how to do it, how many kids you can have, how long you can live, what side to butter your toast on. Some people like that. They find that peaceful, to know exactly the boundaries of their cage. And it is a cage. It's a cage of loss of free will, loss of choice. If you don't like having choices, if you don't like making decisions, fine. Go ahead and worship that, but don't try to force it on everybody else. Because by forcing, we become tyrants, and tyranny is the cardinal karmic sin. You get how this works? Okay, so communion. What do I mean by communion? Well, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Catholic faith, I guess Orthodox folks do communion too. The root idea that comes to mind is sharing this symbolic eating of the flesh of Christ, kind of sick idea, through a little yucky tasting piece of wafer, and the blood of Christ, which is a little thimble full of not wine, because they don't do it with wine in most churches anymore because people scream bloody murder. You're giving people alcohol, even children. Anyway, that's kind of the classic idea of communion, but basically communion, common union. It's coming together. It doesn't mean you're going to be united all the time. It does not mean you are one. You are uniting for a time, for a specific purpose. The communion of the communion service is uniting a congregation in whatever their idea of the perfection of Christ is. They're recommitting to try to live that Christ-like life, whatever that ideal means to your congregation. Now, to that extent, that's a very good thing. Everything that we do together, in fact, is a communion. Anything that you consciously do with somebody else, voluntarily, willingly, that's communion. When it's forced, and you can force people into communion, that's communism. This is the difference between communion and communism. It's the force element. If you force people to be one, if you force unity on them, that is communism. Whether you do it spiritually or secularly, that's communism. That's enforcing a unity that they may not want. You can't force everybody to be one without incurring a lot of karma, because it takes tyranny to keep people in a pen. And oneness is a pen. It's a prison. Sometimes you need some time alone. Sometimes you need to be part of a different one, a different unity. And that's okay. That's why we have many different religions. And we will continue to have many different religions. That's why we have different corporations. That's why one corporation or one government for everybody is not going to work. It needs to be distributed so people have choices. If you don't like our government, move somewhere else. If you don't like this company, move somewhere else. This is essentially free choice, and to the extent we make it impossible to make a free choice, we are forcing people. And yes, to some extent, wage-saved slavery is force. If you put people in a situation where they really don't have any option, which does happen a lot in corporations. Good example, I'll tell you, the cat wants to go out, or I'm going to let her out. You don't want to make your appearance? No, you want to go outside? Okay. Golden handcuffs are ways of imprisoning people in corporations. Benefits that don't vest until you put in a number of years. Benefits you don't get unless you get to retirement age. This is essentially, at its heart, a way of imprisoning people and forcing them to work in the same corporation and not have the freedom to move. So I think that's enough on communion and oneness. Communion can be a wonderful thing. And actually, I do want to state a little bit more. Voluntary communion, coming together with a purpose, with an ideal, voluntarily, everybody committed to it, there's a lot of spiritual energy there. And if you look at successful organizations, successful churches, successful marriages, successful families, etc., you will see that they have a sense of communion that is inspired by a real unity, a real reason to want to be together, not a force. We're all gonna, close our eyes at our desks and pray for world peace now. Let's synchronize your watches. The prayer's about to start. Watch for the pop-up on your screen. We're all going to pray now. Or what? If it's voluntary, that's fine. And if you have a good idea of what you're praying for, what you want, that is a way of combining spiritual energies to achieve something. This is the truth of the much overused law of attraction. Yes, you can affect reality. You can make changes to the multiverse locally or on a larger scale. The extent which you can change things depends on the amount of spiritual energy that is focused. The amount of spiritual energy that's focused depends on the number of souls and the level of the souls, how much power they actually have, how much power they can focus, and how focused the combination of those powers is. If you've got a group that's praying for world peace, you can bet that you've got another group that's praying against you because they benefit from war, and those prayers are going to cancel out. And they should, really, because where does peace come from? What is peace? You haven't defined what you're praying for. Does peace mean that my side gets to make all the rules, all the decisions, and force them on everybody else? Well, that's not peace. That's tyranny. That's slavery. And pretty much every oneness group I've ever run across, that's what they want to do when they get into power, is force their peace on everyone else. Even if it's the peace of the grave, which is what a fair number of groups are focused on doing with the human race. Let's give them peace. Let's wipe the whole bunch of bastards out because they're so uncomfortably raccoon in our perfect universe. One man's peace is another man's extinction. One species' peace is another one's extinction. And this is the crux of many of the problems we have. A lot of folks think, well, peace can only come if we have less than X number of people. If we eliminate all the little people and replace them with peaceful androids, or program them with propaganda so they are very peaceful and they just take in their little piece of peace every day and do what they're told and buy what they're told to buy, and everything will be perfect. Kumbaya, globalist rule. Yeah, so communion is not oneness. Forced communion is communism. And yes, communism is a globalist agenda. It's not a populist agenda. Communism doesn't mean everybody gets to be a millionaire. It means everybody that's not at the top of the Communist Party or the Globalist Party, which is the same thing, lives like rats in a cage, while the privileged ones hide behind their great firewalls, hide behind their media PR outlet, tell you everything is perfect while you're starving, while your population is being reduced on purpose by introducing new drugs, new foods, new cures that are actually going to kill you or make you sterile, make you less likely to reproduce. This is oneness, this is communism, this is globalism in its current incarnation. Okay, final one. Attraction is not power. Okay, you'll hear a lot of people preaching law of attraction. I can get what I want if I just focus on it because I have the power. I have the spiritual power to make my own reality. Did I sound a little bit like Donald Trump there? I was intending to sound more like Hitler or Putin or Xi Jinping or Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Nancy Pelosi. I don't know. These are people who are deeply caught up in the idea that because I've been successful for so long at doing something, and I think my something is doing something right, I'm powerful, I am strong, I can do anything. Whatever I say is gonna happen, and it's gonna be perfect because I'm perfect. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. No matter what you're doing spiritually, if you have come to believe that it's all about exercise of power, pulling more power to you for your agenda, you are falling victim to cardinal sin. The pursuit of power, above all else, is the pursuit of tyranny. Group tyranny, personal tyranny, it doesn't matter. To the extent you support tyranny, that's dark karma. Now you can do that. You'll end up in the universes of dark gods. If you ever get a chance to become a god, you will be a dark god. And they serve a purpose in the multiverse. Dark gods are the teachers. The teachers that are the headmasters of hells, because that's what these dark universes are. They minister to souls that are resonant with the gods of those dark universes. And those are dark souls that have the same kind of darkness, the same kind of addictions, the same kind of delusions and illusions. And they will go to those universes and live incarnations in either the physical, the spiritual, or the God level realms, and realize, you know what? Being dark is not as good as I thought it was going to be. Or they will just absolutely say, darkness is my thing. And they can pursue either path to the extent that they want. And some will end up being the masters of tin soldier universes, where they control everything. Everything goes their way. Everything is organized and structured their way. Or if they want to play with others, they will be able to play with others in either the existing system, the system that God set up, which is based upon some special universes of integration where we get to meet and plan constructive, creative activities. Or there may be other groups of universes where like-minded dark gods keep scheming and dreaming of doing better than God. Hey, if they can, knock themselves out. Define better. For me, better is a longer, sustainable timeline from beginning to finish, alpha to omega, that keeps expanding. You keep finding better starting points and better ending points. And you never throw away any of the midpoints, because those become useful training sessions for souls who gravitate towards that level of training. And that all exists. That's the truth. If you like living in the Middle Ages, you can live in the Middle Ages for life after life after life. And you will contribute to keeping that part of the timeline sustained. And possibly someday you might contribute to finding a slightly better way to have made the overall creation the best timeline, the prime timeline, not perfect. Perfection is not a goal. Perfection is an anti-goal, if you will, because it leaves nothing left to do. Once you achieve perfection, all the souls get bored with the game, and they don't want to play that game anymore, because there's nothing left to do. And what is playing a game is doing something fun, right? That's why we play games. And ultimately, the game of souls is about making a game that's fun to play. If you make a game that's not fun to play, you can do that, and nobody will want to play your game. And if you want to find players, you'll have to force them to play your game, right? We're all making games, and we're all playing games all the time. This is the whole point of existence. This is the whole point of consciousness. It's to entertain ourselves. Now, there's different ways of entertaining yourself, isn't it? There are addictive ways of entertaining yourself by continuing to engage in behaviors that hurt others, hurt yourself. And those are dark behaviors. Free will doesn't force you not to do dark things, does it? We see people doing dark things all around us. The whole point of creation is to try to isolate the darkness, not destroy it. When you destroy the darkness, you become dark. It's true. Now that doesn't mean we have to accept darkness either, because we don't have an obligation to let others project on us. We don't have an obligation to accept their reality and let it work against our reality, our goals. Hey, knock yourself out doing your own thing, but don't drag me into it, right? Dragging people into your fantasy reality is tyranny. Insisting that we are all one and attacking anybody that says, I'm not, that's tyranny. We're all Russians. We're all Ukrainians. We're all Chinese. That's tyranny. We're all individuals. We share collective goals, collective identities, only to the extent that we choose to. Okay? Choice. You cannot force everybody to accept your identity. Oh, I identify as a peach. You have to call me Peach from now on. That's tyranny. Nobody has to accept what nonsense you come up with. You don't have the right to force your personal pronouns on anybody else. That's tyranny. You don't have the right to expect more than anybody else just because you identify as a peach. There's plenty of apples and oranges and bananas out there that deserve consideration just as much as you do. All kinds of fruits. I'm sorry, but this is tyranny. It is karmic sin. And to the extent you do it in a larger scope is bigger tyranny. You're trying to gain power for your identity group at the expense of other identity groups. And when you do that, you will start wars. You will start conflicts, and you will not have oneness. You will have the opposite of oneness. You will have division. You will not have peace. You will have the opposite of peace. War. Revolution. Riot. Crime. Misogyny. Abuse of children. Abuse of the elderly. Abuse of everybody. Because I was just doing it because that's my identity. I can't help it. That's my nature. That's my reality. Don't diss me, man. I'm just pursuing my reality because I'm entitled to my reality because of the law of attraction. And it's not real anyway because we're all just disconnected from source and we're going to go back to source anyway and everything will be perfect. And so this is not real. There are some dangerous falsehoods that people are clinging to. And they're more dangerous than any of the falsehoods we clung to before because they have no root in any kind of moral system. They are totally amoral at their basis. And let me tell you, human incarnated souls need morality. They need a religious basis for good behavior until they gain enough experience to have a better basis for it. And that experience doesn't come in one incarnation. You cannot expect a newborn soul getting their first test drive of a human soul vehicle to have a moral compass. It doesn't exist. The moral compass is what we're building through reincarnation and karma. You can't indoctrinate it into minds. At least not to a full extent. And if you fill a mind full of your idea of perfection, and your idea of perfection is flawed, it serves your identity group, your power, your definition of what is good, what is evil, you are blinding them to a deeper truth. Now, sometimes you need to do that. A parent faces this challenge. Teachers face this challenge once their kids are in their classes. Because you can't expect friends of the same basic level as your children to teach them right from wrong. Maybe you'll get lucky and they will meet an older soul that kind of knows naturally, and there are a lot of kids like that that are just kind of beacons of light, because even though they're children, they're very old souls who are growing up quickly and who have an inherent knowledge of karma, of the deeper truths that it takes many incarnations to learn, many incarnations from different viewpoints to learn. This is why we need reincarnation. This is why we need reincarnation amnesia, so you can see different viewpoints without the clouds of old viewpoints getting in your eyes. This is why we need to make mistakes. And we will hurt other people, on purpose or inadvertently. That doesn't mean we're entitled to hurt them. That doesn't mean that we won't someday have to make up for that hurting, atone for that sin. And this is a large part of how the system of karma works. So I ask you, I implore you, to look at what you accept as truth, what you accept as fundamental, absolute truths, and honestly evaluate whether those are true lies, whether they're truisms, half-truths, whether they are useful truths. And I encourage anyone who is not familiar with the fundamentals of logic, take a Logic 101 course, a good Logic 101 course, and stop making assumptions based upon bad logic. A equals B does not necessarily mean that B equals A, unless you're talking about the same kind of thing. If you're talking about a number, a whole number, 1 equals A equals B, must be the same as B equals A. If you're talking about a property of a soul, or a soul vehicle, A equals B does not imply B equals A. You get the difference? Relation is not connection. Communion is not oneness. Attraction is not power. And none of these things is going to be good unless it reflects an understanding of karma. Because these are all concepts being dealt with by souls. And souls are essentially governed by karma. This is what drives the system of reincarnation, karma. This is what determines which heaven you go to and what choices you get for your next incarnation. And then you go through the incarnation and you make your choices based upon the experiences that come to you during that incarnation. And that has an effect on your Merkaba field, the spiritual field of your individual nature. And that field determines your attractions, what you are attracted to, what you're repulsed from. And that changes with each incarnation and even with each new thought. It's not a fixed thing. It will change depending on what situation you're in. Just like a magnet doesn't have a fixed magnetic field. It does in a vacuum, but if you take two magnets and you put them close to each other, you will see that their field lines change depending on their orientation, their relation to each other. Okay? Souls are like that. That amount of change is governed by 1/r² law. If you move those things apart, their effect on each other's field is very minuscule. By default, that's the law of electromagnetics. Now, the fact that there are cases where that doesn't apply doesn't mean that's all. You can choose as a soul to maintain a connection. This is the power of spiritual energy. Spiritual energy is different than electromagnetic energy. Spooky force at a distance is a reflection of spiritual energy. And until physicists understand that, they're not going to really understand this weird behavior of the photons. Eventually, they will understand this as, oh, okay, photons have souls, and they have a choice to stay in touch with other souls that they happen to like to hang out with. And can remotely decide, let's smoke a joint for old times, even though we're 5 galaxies apart now. Okay? That's a choice. It's not forced on them. And for every pair of photons you see bound like this, you will find others that are not bound. Those won't be interesting to you because they won't show you anything you didn't already expect. But if you assume that everything is connected, and that's your desire, your perfect universe, well, you might observe that, but that probably means that you've already transitioned to the Borg universe, where connections are forced. That's where you want to be. That's where you belong, I guess. At any rate, I think I've covered my topic quite well. A little bit under an hour now, so it's nice when I can end up a little sooner. I hope the sound was better this time. I think I got everything set up right. If you like this discussion, like, share, subscribe, whatever. Tune in for more. Until next time, this is Rob Trump with the Oneness Hour. Thanks for tuning in.